Welcome, everyone. I now call the December 10th, 2024 regular City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this point, we'll take a moment to take a roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name. City clerk?
Thank you. Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alders? Here. Councilmember Kurd?
Here.
Councilmember Menke? Councilmember Dodd?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present with the exception of Councilmember Menke, who is absent and excused.
Thank you, City Clerk. Before we continue with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to reiterate some guidelines. For remote meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. Mute your microphone when not speaking. And for council attending remotely, use the raise hand feature when you wish to speak. First up on our agenda is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to public engagement opportunities. We have the annual pet food drive now through December 31st. Donation bins are located in the lobbies of the Bothell PD and City Hall. Please bring your donations of pet food and supplies to our donation bins to help fill in the shelves at Everett Animal Shelter and North Shore Senior Center. We also have Sharing African Roots, Diversity, Unity, and Resilience, Saturday, December 14th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at City Hall, hosted by Washington State Coalition of African Leaders and made possible through Bothell Arts Commission's Creative Arts Grant Program. Highlights include West African food, Rwandan traditional dance, and a vendor marketplace. The New Year's Eve blood drive at Bothell PD is Tuesday, December 31st from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the Bothell Police Department Community Room. During the holiday season, officers typically respond to more accidents on our road. The need for blood at our area hospitals increases while donations decrease, but you can make a big difference. All right, next up is public comment. The city has accepted public comment in writing as well as accepted signups for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make notes of items requiring follow-up. City clerk, could you announce the visitor comment signups? Asking if people have signed up seems like probably the wrong move tonight, so I'll just ask you to get them started.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to review the written comments that were received first. So we received written comment from Susan Gardner regarding the Bothell Historical Museum and the 102nd Bridge. And we received written comment from Mary Evans regarding the Bothell Historical Museum. The following people wrote in regarding the comprehensive plan, so I'm just going to state their names. Trevor Stull, Nancy Leonardi, Lori Dunham, Joanne Harkonnen, Ray Thomas, Aaron Leviton, Matthew Leviton, Sarah Gustafson, David Leviton, Lee Gibson, Clay Gibson, Christine Mobley, Ryan Graves, Dale Rector, Michael Graves, Christine Cash, Mark Swanson, who also wrote in regarding HB 1110 and BOPOP, Peter Fries, Sterling Castle, Jeannie Robinson, Gerald Eller, and Tara Adams. Those were the written comments received today. Next up, I'm going to call on the people that have signed up to speak live tonight. Before we begin, I'm going to ask you that you hold any applause so that we can get through all the people that are here to speak. When I call your name, you'll have 3 minutes, and the light at the dais will turn green, and at 1 minute left, it'll start blinking, and at 30 seconds left, it'll turn yellow. So the first person I have is Katie Sills. And let me look.
She's in the attendee room on Zoom.
There she is. Okay, sorry. I will panel her in. Hi, Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie Sills, and I'm a resident of Bothell. I would like to share my support for the Imagine Bothell Comprehensive Plan, which I know well as one of the newer members welcomed onto the Planning Commission, where we've had a number of public meetings discussing it. I think it's important to talk about what we are already losing by not encouraging enough middle housing and transit-oriented development. I have a young son, and like many working parents in Bothell, we send him off to preschool every day. When he was 2, he had an absolutely amazing teacher. I would say she was born to do it, but I'm sure she worked really hard to develop activities that made learning really fun for the little kiddos. And it was really touching to witness. And all the other parents felt the same. Then we found out this teacher was losing her housing. And if we couldn't find her housing for what she could afford on her childcare worker salary, she would have to move away. And I was desperate to find housing for this teacher. I cold called places in case they had MFTE units. I went on Zillow looking for possible rooms to rent. I found a few okay options in Kirkland, but this teacher didn't have a car, so it also needed to be accessible to transit. After a few months of trying to make something work, she transferred to a child care location in another state. And I think about that a lot. My son was privileged to have her as a teacher, but what about all the Bothell kids who now won't? And at what crazy scale is this happening? Call me selfish, but I want the best teachers, the best childcare providers, the best police officers, nurses, plumbers, coaches, bus drivers, home health aides here in Bothell. These are essential jobs that cannot be done remotely, and they relate directly back to all of our quality of life. Housing is by far the largest monthly expense a household has. Transportation costs are second, leading to people making the decision to accept a job that might be a little lower in pay, but more affordable housing and a better commute. That trend is already costing us. Middle housing means a range of affordable choices. It's a 3-story, 3-unit walk-up my husband and I rented in our 20s that was cute and charming and almost identical to the $2.5 million row house a family owned next door. I know a plan can't magically solve everything, but it is a necessary first step. I thank the council, the staff, and the community for their work to envision how we can do this and urge you all to support the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Wayne Behringer.
Is that better? Probably can't hear me anyways. Good evening. Our delay the vote petition simply and clearly asks citizens if they want more clarity and dialogue around the 2024 comprehensive plan, which, by the way, has significant new zoning rules as of November 14th. We are not against affordability. We want more clarity and dialogue. When we issued that petition 1 week ago, or since we issued it, 750 residents, as of a few moments ago, have signed and said they want more clarity and dialogue. I hope that we are not ignored or dismissed. Again, we are not against affordability. As we were working this petition, someone filed an official complaint against this petition yesterday. Who? We don't know. But we easily refuted every element of this complaint with data and citations gathered from extensive research of the public record. The complaint was highly uninformed. Even before the complaint, we were growing more concerned. In the past 2 weeks, we have read the comp plan cover to cover. We've spoken to city council members and city staff, and we watched videos of the planning meetings and city council meetings. We're not any more clear on the plan's goals, details, or benefits to common Bothell residents, especially those related to dramatic increases in zoning in our neighborhoods. No one that we spoke with could clarify for us specific affordability plans, specific zoning protections for neighborhoods, or a vision for this plan that petition signers support. Nor could they explain why density changed so late in the process. Bothell residents should be aware Zoning in major swaths of Bothell was changed at the very last minute in this 2-year process, November 14th. From 4 to 5 housing units per acre to 25 units per acre. Why the late changes? Residents should also know this plan's density increases are far beyond the state's mandates. And residents should finally know that since zoning was materially changed on November 14th, any documents shared at public engagement events before that date were not the documents we're voting on tonight. Council members, if you are for future residents over current ones, we don't agree. If you believe this plan creates affordable housing, we don't agree. And if you continue to tell us that we're too late to complain now, the facts don't support that. I'm sure you've done your homework and that you know this plan does nothing to aid affordable housing. You also know that zoning part of the plan was materially changed late and that hundreds and hundreds of residents are seriously against these changes.
Thank you, Mr. Behringer. Thank you. Your time is up.
Please vote against this.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jeremy Tadros.
Oh, hi, Council. Thank you for hearing from us tonight. I'd like to start with a series of questions for you to consider. Without addressing affordability, do you believe your kids and your grandkids, when they're looking for a house, are going to be able to afford a home unless affordability is addressed? Do you believe that the seniors in your life will be able to still afford their senior living homes if affordability is not addressed? Do you believe that they'd still be able to afford it if the projected 23% reduction in Social Security payments takes place in 9 years as projected? Do you believe that you'd be able to stay in Bothell if your home was severely damaged by flooding or a windstorm knocking a tree in your home and insurance doesn't fully pay out? If your answers to any of these questions was not a resounding yes, then you should vote for this plan. During the last meeting, people spoke against this plan, citing huge apartment complexes being built right next to them in their neighborhoods. Some said that they favored what they termed smart growth over this plan. However, if you examine the plan and the studies done over the plan over the last couple of years, you would find that this is not the case. For example, there was a feasibility study done to evaluate the effectiveness of this plan. This study has been up on the city site for over a year. If you search Bothell Middle Housing Feasibility Study in the city government site search bar, pops up. A conclusion of that study was that over the course of 20 years, 5% of the rezoned single-family home lots across the city would actually be converted into multifamily homes, 5% over a course of 20 years. This does not mean the destruction of neighborhoods by massive apartment complexes. This means more opportunities for home ownership in the form of duplexes, townhomes, and other forms of neighborhood-appropriate middle housing for Bothellites who want to be here for a lifetime. Even the existing neighborhoods that are single-family zoned had to be developed at some point. And I'm sure if we go far back enough in city records, we would find similar concerns by then existing residents about those new single-family developments that many of those here now live in. The dichotomy of apartments versus single-family homes is a false one. It is one that opponents cite that this is the future with the plan. However, in reality, that is the status quo. The comprehensive plan is the smart growth that we all want. Please vote for this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Andrew Nelson.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council, I hope you're doing well. I'm speaking in support of our 2024 Comprehensive Plan. I'm a lifelong Bothelite. I've been living in Bothell for 25 out of my 27 years on Earth in Canyon Park. I've been following our city's 2024 Comprehensive Plan since I learned about the plan in 2022, and I've seen the efforts the city staff have made to ensure this document has community input in it. I know this. I've taken the surveys. I've been to the open houses. I've talked to city staff, and I've been to city council meetings. The city has had ample time to take all voices into consideration. Something near and dear to me is housing affordability, and Bothell, much like the rest of the Seattle area, has become increasingly unaffordable. With that in mind, I'm proud the city of Bothell has listened to people like me and is tackling the issue by advocating for different housing types throughout the city. Upzoning should not be vilified and be viewed negatively. Rather, it should be viewed as a way to welcome neighbors into our beautiful community. We need to increase housing supply to keep up with job creation, new residents, students, families, and those who will come to live in Bothell. As a young adult living in Bothell, I've talked to multiple people of all ages, and a lot of people had to move away due to housing costs. They just couldn't live here. And that meant moving away from their family, moving away from their friends, moving away from their work, making the commute longer, and moving away from a place they plan to live for a lifetime. That is unacceptable, which is why I'm extremely proud of this work done by our city to make housing more affordable in this plan for all income levels. It should be, and I believe already is, the city's mission to ensure that future generations can live, work, and play in the amazing city of Bothell, a city I'm proud to call my home. Thank you all for your time. Congratulations to all of you and for everyone for building such a great plan. And I'm looking forward to having a yes vote tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Cameron Chapman.
Hello, Council and fellow Bothellites. My name is Cameron, and I've lived here my whole life, almost 3 decades now. I'm here in strong support of expanding middle housing in our community via the comprehensive plan. Housing types like duplexes, triplexes, and small apartment buildings that complement single-family living. I've heard from a lot of people opposed to the changes, including at last Thursday's public engagement meeting, and most argue increasing housing density could change the character of our neighborhoods. I want to contest this. The character of our neighborhoods isn't defined solely by the type of buildings we live in. It's defined by the people, the interactions, and the sense of belonging we create. Our neighborhoods are defined by the shared spaces we walk, the places we support, and the relationships we build. The diversity of housing types enriches that character. There are those of whom I've heard, however, that are not willing to accommodate growth, regardless of character of the neighborhood changing for the better. By opposing upzoning altogether, these people ensure that fewer affordable houses are built and that inequality deepens. They make it harder for young people, working families, immigrants, and low-income individuals to find a place to call home by attempting to stall growth at every turn. In this case, at the finish line after 2 years of public engagement that I participated in. If we are serious about preserving the character of our neighborhoods and not just stopping growth altogether, we must recognize that this character is strengthened by diversity of age, income, family structure, and yes, even housing types. Missing middle housing allows us to keep neighborhoods vibrant and inclusive rather than locking into a model that only benefits a small segment of the population. It ensures that families, seniors, students, and workers of all incomes have a place to live and that our neighborhoods remain affordable and connected. Missing middle housing doesn't change the character of our neighborhoods. It enhances it. It brings more people into the fold, fosters inclusivity, and ensures that our communities remain affordable, vibrant, and connected for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ray Thomas.
Good evening, council members, members of the community, staff, city manager. I want to thank you all, both those who are opposed and those who are in favor of the comprehensive plan. I submitted written comments, and so I'm not going to go into a great detail on those. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone for participating. I am adamantly supportive of the work you have done here, and I continue to support your efforts. I have been here in Bothell for over 40 years. I've been a member of the Landmarks Preservation Board, which I hope to strengthen in the coming years. And I think I have a good perception of some of the history of Bothell that many, many residents do not know. And I think this is a historic moment. I encourage you to take it and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dale Rector.
Sorry, okay. Hello, my name is Dale Rector, and I've lived in Bothell since 1997. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council. Council. Imagine Bothell's communication plan has failed to cause enough early engagement for key stakeholders. I'm sure you reached out with something like, come give us feedback on the Imagine Bothell plan, but that's clearly not an effective strategy to broadly inform and engage residents on a radical rezone of their houses. I know an apartment building is planned behind Rite Aid, but I had no idea Imagine Bothell was rezoning our house to 60 units per acre. I know about the Rite Aid apartments from their proposed land use sign. Imagine Bothell's communication plan has failed to put the equivalent of a proposed land use sign in front of affected residents. Imagine if you'd installed a large banner over Bothell Way reading, "We're proposing a radical rezone of your house. Give us feedback. Thank you, the Planning Commission." You would have received a flood of feedback early on. 10 years ago, we received a postcard from Bothell explaining a proposal to build a road from 522 up a critical slope through an existing house and into West Hill. That postcard was a great proposed land use sign. It triggered immediate engagement from our neighborhood. I've seen nothing equivalent from Imagine Bothell. You've received feedback from hundreds of Bothell residents, but you're about to radically rezone tens of thousands of residents that you have not heard from. That is not going to go well. You need to put the equivalent of a proposed land use sign in front of everyone to get the feedback you need to make this plan a success. Our West Hill home and 14 neighbors are zoned R5400. This plan rezones them to RM3, 60 units per acre, 4 times denser than Country Village, as best as I can tell. Those homes are in the back of 2 single-family home neighborhoods, all are atop steep critical slopes, and are adjacent to protected wetlands. This is a ridiculous zoning change proposal for where these houses are located and highlights why this plan needs more community input and refinement. This plan creates misaligned incentives for developers, and I think that Country Village is a great example of what happens when you give a developer a densely zoned area and say, go for it. Is that the kind of development we're trying to incentivize? Random pockets of density, sometimes 60 units per acre, driven not by a thoughtful siting plan, but by who sells what house when and what developer happens to pick it up? Developers will largely optimize for financial gain and not optimize for making Bothell a better place to live long term. This is our collective responsibility. I believe this plan needs more guardrails and guidance for what gets built where, radically rezoning the entire city, and then letting developers have a field day with that is highly unlikely to turn out well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, next is Mike Wagner.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm new to this, but it's good to be here. I'm concerned about the increased density that we're planning with the new plan for Bothell. I'm in a residential neighborhood. I love my neighborhood. I think this plan would destroy that neighborhood. I mean, maybe not immediately, but has the potential to have 80 units per acre. I just don't understand who is asking for this increase in density and growth other than developers and special interests. I understand the need for affordable housing, and there's ways to do that, but completely rezoning Bothell, I do not believe that's the way to approach it. And I'm sorry if I'm late to the party. I hadn't heard about this, recently found out, and appreciate the opportunity to comment. But I think we could do a better job of letting people know that this is what we're proposing to do in your neighborhood. Are you good with it? If people are good with it, so be it. But it just seems like what we're trying to do right now is destroy our small town character. And I'm also curious about the plans for infrastructure to keep up. Are we going to have added police, added parking? How are we going to deal with the increase in traffics? How are we going to have plans to preserve our trees and habitat? And just why are we trying to grow so fast? It seems like we're growing faster than we need to. I like the character of Bothell. I understand we are going to grow, but we don't have to be turning the keys loose to the developers to grow quickly. I'm already missing. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ann Agard.
Good evening. On June 26, 2024, I attended the Planning Commission public hearing. And at that June 26 meeting, when this hybrid that you are considering on adopting was first presented to as Exhibit A in the city's comprehensive plan, I recommended that it not be recommended to the city council and that the neighborhood alternative described as hybrid not be recommended because there was no information on what this hybrid involved. No figures, nothing about numbers or what was going to be done. They simply had a hybrid option. And the Planning Commission asked the same questions. But the staff said that the information would be coming in the flume in early fall in the draft. But the information did not come in the early fall. Rather, it came on November 5th in a staff report when the final plan was before the council for adoption. And then on November 6th, the Planning Commission adopted the facts and findings for the implementing amendments and for the zoning of this plan. The final comp plan was not available to the public on the Imagine Bothell website until November 16th and the final EIS not until November 18th, before the public hearing, as you well know, on November 19th, when the windstorm necessitated the closing of the hearing, and it was continued to the 26th. The proposed flume maps and the implementing regulations provide for intense densification of Bothell's neighborhoods, in particular Queensboro, Maywood Hills, and West Hill, with smaller lot sizes, minimum setbacks, reduced parking. All streets will have higher traffic volumes, higher cut-through traffic, more on-street parking, and increased demand and significant impacts on existing infrastructure and public services. I request that you, Bothell Council, not vote this evening, but rather that you commit to doing sub-area plans at the minimum with these three areas in January and February. Come to some specific agreement about where some intensified housing can be developed, but not throughout the whole areas.
Thank you, Ms. Agard. Your time is up. Thank you. Next, we have Mark Swanson.
Let's talk about the big rocks, shall we? The big rocks are that King and Snohomish County over the last 5 years only growing at 1%. That's a big rock. Another big rock is that the IRS in 2022, the last numbers available, the state of Washington lost population, didn't gain it. In that same year, when we approved the election, King County dropped by 1%. So what is this really about? I've submitted written comments tonight. I want our city manager to consider the fact that HB 1110, which has since been codified into law, requires that we take our population growth protections from the Office of Financial Management, not from the Puget Sound Regional Council. So why did we opt to pick Hybrid 2.5, which forces Bothell to grow at 600% of the state population growth, and that's for King and Snohomish County? What's going on here? I have sent 50 written comments, and I don't know, somewhere about 100 links, where I tried to argue against the very changes we've been seeing the last 2.5 years here. Yet, to date, despite the fact that the promise was that anything that needed follow-on questioning, I would be contacted by city staff. 2.5 years. You know how long I've been here. You know how many times I've said it. You're not following state law, and I've yet to be contacted. Consider the litigation, millions of dollars of litigation, which may include you people personally on city council. Because in my opinion, and I'm sure the preponderance of evidence would show in civil litigation, that you have violated your oath of office. But I'm not an attorney. Stop growing at 500 to 600%. Delay the vote. You need to contact people like me and the 750 plus people that are objecting to approving this vote tonight if you want to avoid class action lawsuits and civil litigation that will go on for 10 years. Follow the law. Use the Office of Financial Management population projection, not the PSRC. They're just a club we belong to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Dennis Sills.
Red is getting this conference.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the Imagine Bothell Comprehensive Plan proposal. I live in Bothell and have since 2019. We realize this area is growing quickly. We are among the 1.8 million people expected here by 2050. We know that decent, affordable housing is needed to support that growth, and this plan is how we get there. Thank you for a long and inclusive process to develop this plan. This plan addresses all the potential areas for growth we need to prepare for the next 20 years. From housing and parks to transportation and equity, this plan will help us move forward with a Bothell we can all be proud of, and it does so in a sustainable way. But I'm here today for 3 reasons. Because I believe in progress, I'm here because I believe our neighbors and friends are relying on this plan, and I'm here because I believe in a better future for my son, who's right here. From a growth perspective, Imagine Bothell can create an environment where families, seniors, students, and others can find appropriate housing that suits their needs. It can ensure that people are not housing burdened and paying too much on a rent or mortgage. It can also create pathways to generational wealth for people from all backgrounds. I want to share a story about a friend and neighbor who underscores the importance of this plan. She was my son's teacher at Bothell Kindercare, but after some issues with her living situation, she's no longer able to afford housing and had to move away. She's a beloved teacher at Kindercare, and many families are worse off because she couldn't afford to stay. The Imagine Housing Plan is about creating more opportunities for growth in the future. I am hopeful that if my son decides to stay here and attend UW Bothell in the future, there's an affordable place for him to live and thrive. In closing, this plan embraces free market economics and should appeal to people of all ideologies. Creating more opportunity for growth does not mandate that certain infrastructure will be built in certain locations. The Imagine Bothell plan creates an environment for growth and for our future. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Jeannie Robinson.
Hello, everyone. In 2007, I was at the city council meeting because there was a hearing to rezone the area behind our house of 108th and 405. The rezone would have meant from single family to apartments and townhomes. We went in 2007, a group of us neighbors, And we were able to, over a period of 10 years, create the North Creek Forest instead of apartments. Now, I don't bring that up for any reason except this. A lot has been said about affordable housing. I totally agree. I'm big on diversity. I'm big on inclusion. And I want all populations to be able to live in Bothell. But the reason I bring it up is twofold. One, it takes a long time. We never would have probably tried to save that forest if we knew it would take 10 years. But we came to many, many, many city council meetings. And to eternal credit of the city council, they moved, they changed, they listened, they grew, and we're so appreciative of that and of all of you. So I'm for slowing down to give the best process. And secondly, and this is maybe most important to me, while we've talked about infrastructure and police and the traffic and all of that, the one population that I want to be sure and state, and probably you have already thought of this, but I want to say it and have it recorded, the population of green space. Because we know that all people need the peace, the serenity, the beauty, the fresh air of green space. So if slowing down means we can create some good living situations, affordable housing, and carefully make sure that there's good setbacks, green space, place for kids to walk and breathe, then go for it. But thank you very much for your attempts to preserve the environment in Bothell.
Thank you. Next, we have Bobby Moody.
Well, this is a fortunate and unfortunate situation for myself because I'm really new to this topic. I didn't even know, I've lived in Bothell for 4 years. I didn't even have any clue that this plan was going on. I've been mortgage lending for 30 years. And every time somebody wants to buy in Bothell, they want to buy a single family home. They want to have a yard. They want to have neighbors. They want to congregate with their picnics. A lot of the clients I work with are of East Indian descent, and they want to buy single family homes all around so they can live next to their neighbor. They're very, very family orientated. They have a lot of big parties. They invite them to me to their parties and stuff. And so they don't want to come to Bothell and buy a townhome. They don't want to live in apartments. I lived in downtown Kirkland before I moved to Bothell 4 years ago, across the street from the low-income housing apartment complex. I had pot smell coming in my house all the time. I had meth addicts coming to my doors. I had people of all kinds of ill repute stealing things from me. So I'm not saying that apartment complexes are all like that, but dense housing always can bring a wide aptitude of people. And we want everybody to have a good living space and a good culture. But we also want to have a city that supports small businesses and people that want to come and walk in downtown and buy things. One of the biggest complaints I have right now is there's not a small city that I can go to currently, locally, on Small Business Saturday and I can buy a handmade Christmas gift. Because we are turning our cities into apartment complexes in the downtown core areas and not giving somebody that has a little crafty idea to put a little shop in that can sell things on Saturdays. So I'm pro housing. Affordable housing really comes with affordable mortgage rates. I've been in the business 30 years again. Affordable housing is not going to come in a townhome with $350 or $500 a month in HOA dues. So I'm a vote no, but I'm also a vote no because I didn't even know this was going on until 2 weeks ago. So please, when you're making a huge decision about the city of Bothell and the way we're going to live, please put a big billboard out there and tell us all, because we all want to be part of the community. We all want to be part of Bothell. We all want to feel like we're important as a citizen and a taxpayer. Thank you very much for the impromptu conversation.
Thank you. That is all I have signed up. However, if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak, please step to the podium, state your name. You'll have 3 minutes. And you can queue up a little bit, 3, 4 at a time if that's what you'd like to do.
Do I have to touch anything? Okay. Good evening. My name is Julie Westerbeck, and I am a resident of Bothell and a teacher in the North Shore School District for over 30 years. I am excited to be speaking in support of the comp plan being voted on tonight. About 20 years ago, I can remember moving into our home in Kenmore and being so impressed and a little jealous about the plans Bothell was sharing about what they were planning to do to improve life in Bothell for its residents and its visitors for the next decade. Bothell has been a leader in planning for the future, and this plan is an exciting next step on that journey of continual improvement. I am so glad that the new comp plan is going to allow for housing options for people at all income levels, from low-income housing to college students needing affordable apartments to young families wanting their first home near a great school, and fresh college graduates looking to start living on their own. I am happy that bike, pedestrian, and transit improvements are also planned. When we moved to Bothell about 10 years ago, my daughter was 6 and at the age where she wanted to go scootering everywhere. We loved going to dinner and dining in the many restaurant choices walkable here in downtown. For at least a year, our daughter refused to go anywhere out to eat unless she could scooter there. I was so very thankful that there is a walkable area here in downtown with parks, restaurants, pedestrian areas, a grocery store, a drugstore, and a wonderful public library. And now this plan will continue making improvements to ensure Bothell is a place that can adapt to meet the needs of its people and the challenges in the next decade to come. Do you remember the sign, "Welcome to Bothell for a day or a lifetime"? Bothell has a record of working to make this town a wonderful place to live and visit, and this plan shows that commitment continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead, but please state your name for the record.
My name is Micah Campbell, and I'd like to thank everyone who has come tonight and our city council. Now, I'd like to respond to the people who have talked in support of the comp plan. I'd like to ask a question to all of you. When you're pulling a weed, is it important to pull the top off the weed or get down to the root? Well, I learned from a very young age that it's always important to get to the root of the weed. Otherwise, you're not taking care of the matter. Well, with this plan which the city council is looking into, are you really considering the root of the matter? Why do certain people specifically need a lower income housing? Well, there are multiple reasons. And it's true that there are a lot of people who have many problems, and it requires them to have to go into a lower income housing. But have you considered that a lot of the people who might be in lower income housing might actually have a way to get out of it? Where's the root of the matter which we can actually help them? And does the plan which we are looking into now, does it actually help them? Well, consider this. When I am riding my bike past the University of Washington here in Bothell, I see that a lot of the students are driving BMWs and other expensive cars. Now, when students, young kids, are driving expensive cars, you have to ask yourself this: is that a wise choice? I think a lot of people nowadays are wasting their money and not saving it like they should. Instead of being frugal with what they have, they spend it on frivolities and all the fun stuff. A lot of people, instead of saving their money, will go to work and not work hard. Or they are simply lazy on the job and refuse to try to work hard to step up to a higher position. A lot of people here in the United States are becoming ungrateful. They are not working hard, but instead looking at someone else and seeing if that person has something, then they're going to ask, well, why can't I have that too? The problem with our plan, which you are considering, is that it does not truly help the low income. Developers can come in and build whatever they want. But consider this: how can you help those who might be in a lower income situation to be able to get out of it? Are people in low income situations there because they're not working hard? Is it because they have not used their money wisely? One of the speakers mentioned having lived in Kirkland and dealing with lots of drug smell and drug addicts. A lot of people in the United States are facing drug addictions. Drug addiction is a big problem of why people are in lower income housing. So how can we help people who are on drugs to get out of it so that they do not have to be in such a lower income level? How about let's try helping people to step out of this so that they can live a better lifestyle. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Micah. Next, please step to the podium and state your name.
Hi, I'm Ann Grant. I've been a resident of Bothell for 15 years now, 10 more before that. My major concern is that I did not know what was going on. I'm a reasonably informed person, but we don't have a local newspaper that spreads this kind of news. We don't have, a lot of people don't get local news channels. And I feel like most of my neighbors and pretty much everyone I've contacted in the last couple of weeks since I found out that this plan has changed radically since I looked at it 8 months ago, don't know about it. So you can say you've done outreach, but if you're not reaching the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of the people affected by this decision, your outreach has not been successful. And when I tried to find it on the website, what was going on with this, I couldn't navigate. I build software for a living, but I could not navigate to where you stored this information about what the plan looked like. I finally found it by calling a city planner to ask them where it is, but that's not effective outreach either. I think you owe it to the people who are going to be affected by this, which, as we've heard, is tens of thousands of people, to do a real outreach effort so that you can say you actually tried to find out what the input was from your constituents. But at this point, I just don't see that that's been done. So that's what I would like to see, is postpone this, do a real good job of getting input, and then move on. It's not really so much about affordable housing, whether we're for it or against it. Most everybody is for having enough affordable housing so that we can have preschool teachers and policemen. It's about you doing your job to get this plan out to people, give it a good hearing, take the input on it, and then move forward with a reasonable plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Already on. Hi, my name is Tamara Wood. I work, study, and live in Bothell, and I support the comprehensive plan. As a student of intersectional environmental studies, I want Bothell to be the kind of place that will be a model for cities that exemplify sustainable values, to grow in ways that enrich, not harm, a place with trees and people, a place where my kids can afford to live. As participant of the Imagine Bothell Citizens Steering Committee, I was impressed that the comprehensive plan was addressing many aspects of my studies at UW, from climate change mitigation to remediating the continued harm of redlining in our cities, even down to the details of the semantics of tree protection language. I was also happy to go to the open houses and ask city staff about stormwater, ask about park funding, and talk about salmon conservation on North Creek. I feel confident that the expertise of our city staff, local NGOs, and so many expert stakeholders were consulted during this process, because I was in many spaces where these conversations were happening. From City Hall to open houses, to tabling events, to middle housing tours, these conversations have been great and allowed me to understand the intention and language of the plan as a framework for the future. Change is hard. It is also pretty hard to create a guide to imagine what Bothell could look like in 10 to 20 years. What climate scenario will we be faced with? The Nature Conservatory and UW Climate Impacts Group says that we will see a full shift in growth zones from 8 to 9 in the next 20 years. What kind of social and climate migration should we expect? Well, for example, the Director of National Intelligence projects that our cities are to grow by 2/3 by 2040. In comprehensive planning, these are exactly the questions that are being asked, and plans for the change when growth happens. I, for one, would much rather have a 4-story building with a small footprint and the 100-year-old cedar tree, not one or the other. Hope for the best and plan for the worst. I implore all those calling for affordable housing and tree justice to continue the fight. This is not a closed book, and we still can support initiatives to establish rent control, support an urban forest master plan, and many other aspects that will allow us to be resilient while also finding belonging in a future that is uncertain. To my neighbors, please resist the fear that calls us to close the gates and pull up the ladder, because people will move here regardless of available or affordable housing, and I much would rather see people housed than living in inhumane conditions within our public spaces. Thank you to our electeds and city staff for listening and your patience in tackling such big endeavors that considers not just people voting now, but their children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is TJ Muehlman. I want to thank the City Council and I want to thank everybody for giving their thoughts and opinions. It's been really helpful for me to hear this. I am in support of the comprehensive plan. When my family and I moved here 6 years ago, we deliberately chose Bothell because it reminded us of the communities my wife and I grew up in. I come from a low and middle income housing. I grew up in apartments. I grew up in townhomes. I grew up in condos. And I was really lucky to grow up in a community that was accepting of all kinds of people, a diverse community, a community that had nice houses, regular houses, and apartments. And I lived in those apartments, and it really shaped who I am today. And I'm raising a 6 and 8-year-old, kids that are at Maywood Hills. I live in the Maywood Hills neighborhood. I love that neighborhood. And I think dense housing, I think diverse housing, I think middle income housing will do wonders for Bothell. It will help us grow. It will propel us into the 21st century. And it will mean that we live in a community that is welcoming of all people and not just affluent people. So please, I urge the City Council to accept this measure, and I look forward to working with all y'all moving forward. Thank you.
My name is Patty Bellasy. I've lived in Bothell for 36 years. I feel like the city has failed us. They made an effort, I guess, but I went to several neighborhoods and told them about this happening, and 1 out of 30 knew something about it. We didn't know anything about it. So somewhere along the line, the message didn't get sent. So you have 750 people who've signed a petition saying, please slow down. They're not necessarily saying stop. They're just slow down because we didn't know, and we want to be involved. That was not my speech. Sorry. As I said before, I want to remind you that you represent us. You're not representing 750 or more people in the community. If a very large, this I generalize, group of your constituents speak either in person or by an email on any issue, and over 95% of them agree on what should be done or not done, you definitely should pay attention. In most of these cases, everyone that spoke represent others. So I think, I for one, and I think a lot of people are just saying, please don't make a decision tonight. Figure out another way to reach out to us, and so we can be part of the solution and not just live with what you have decided to do to us.
Thank you. While more people are making their way to the podium, I'm just going to let the people in the virtual audience know if you would like to speak to this issue or any issue, please use the raise hand function. Once we get done with the people in the room, I will call on you and panel you into the meeting. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. My name is Donna Bardsley. I'm a resident of downtown Bothell. And I think at this point, what I would just like to say, well, by the way, I'm here in support of the 2024 comp plan and the residential zoning and development ordinances. And one thing that we've been hearing tonight and also last week are people saying that you haven't been listening, that you're not paying attention. And I just want to say, as somebody who has been paying attention to this process and I have been participating in the public feedback and I've been watching with great interest, I want to say thank you for listening. Thank you. I have seen that you're paying attention. I have seen that you are listening to the feedback from people in the city who are concerned, who are struggling, who are saying this is a big issue that is affecting real lives and real people. And I'm interested because I recently have experience searching for housing in Bothell, both as a homeowner and as a renter. I can tell you it is a struggle. I can tell you even for solidly middle-class families, it is a struggle to find options, to find variety, to find what suits your needs. I'm a parent, obviously, with concerns about my teenage and college-age kids and their future. I'm a friend to a pretty amazing middle school counselor who has no hope, or very little hope, of finding a reasonably affordable place within any decent distance to her job. And so I just want to say that I'm very encouraged that our plan reflects, that the comp plan reflects this urgent need for a broader range of housing options in Bothell. And I do understand that you are aware of the root cause of, one of the root causes being a lack of housing supply and a result of past housing and exclusionary zoning practices, and see the need to address that. I also see that this is a return to more traditional zoning and building policies that are reflected in neighborhoods like Lower Maywood, where we see a diverse range of housing. Last time I checked, it has not been destroyed. It's, as far as I can tell, thriving and a good place to live. I know change is not welcome for most people. I've challenged my own assumptions. I've had to self-reflect to find what I truly value when it comes to participating in my community and advocating for what is needed and benefits people, not just myself. And I think that we can no longer afford to cling with a white-knuckle grip to outdated ideas that maybe homeowners, single-family homeowners, should be like a protected class, entitled to never live next to anything but a single-family home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Patrick Ewing. A lot of you know me. I began my journey in city matters a long time ago. I was a concerned citizen, spoke at a lot of council meetings, planning commission meetings about the development that was occurring, wanting to try to make it better. I got appointed to planning commission, and I got elected to city council, where I served for 12 years, 2 of those as mayor. So in previous comprehensive plans, there was a very detailed comprehensive plan map, the flume map. It had zoning categories that spelled out basically what the minimum lot size was, so that when you looked at the flume map, you could understand what was going to happen. And then the development regulations were built from the flume map. In this comprehensive plan update, the flume map has been made very generic. So when you look at it, you can't tell for sure what you're going to get. And so the EIS, the draft EIS, came out in April. It also had maps that don't have a lot of detail. It has ranges, right? So you don't know what you're going to get until you look at the zoning maps that come out later. Well, those zoning maps came out very late in this process. I heard comments from the dais for the last couple of meetings about how late this group of commenters is occurring. You know, people haven't heard about this amount of change. This is a big change that's going to happen to a lot of people. It's a big change, and they care about their community, and they want to participate in the process. So the flume map came out, not a lot of details. The zoning maps came out November 19th. Well, it was in the agenda packet for that week, so it came out on the November 14th. That was the first time people who have been trying to follow along really understood what was coming. And so that's why the late participation, because people didn't know what was coming. They were surprised at the density increases when they saw that detailed map. So there was a late change in this process. On November 5th was election night. There was a council study session where staff brought forward proposed zoning increases that were huge. The RL2 zone went from 8 units to 12 units per acre. The RM2 zone went from 10 to 25. Those are large increases that happened at the last minute that were only available when the minutes of the agenda packet for the 19th came out. So please do not take action tonight. Please listen to the people who are speaking about their concerns. At a bare minimum, back out the changes that were made late in the game. Back on.
Thank you, Mr. Ewing. Your time is up. I believe.
Hello, my name is Teresa Moynihan. I wasn't going to speak tonight because I don't like talking in front of people. But I had some thoughts as I was listening to all of this. And they're kind of jumbled in my head because, you know, adrenaline. I guess my main point would be the thing I want to speak about is low-income people. Most of my life I was low-income. I have lived in lots of the housing projects in Seattle as a child. I moved, probably 18 times before I was 15-year-old mother. And then after that, you know, in trying to raise my family, I was also low income. And I never did drugs. I have still never done drugs. Even if marijuana is legal now, I have never done drugs. I don't have a police record. I've never shoplifted. I've never done any of the other things. You know what the cause of my low income was? Abuse, neglect, ADHD, and being a teen mom. I needed to live somewhere. My children needed to live somewhere. At one point, we were living in, now I can't even remember, Lakeshore Village Apartments across, you know, Rainier Beach. Sorry, my brain. We moved out of there because there was shooting underneath my window when I was a 16-year-old with a 1-year-old, and I had to move out of there because it was unsafe. You can have low-income places in safe neighborhoods where people can actually afford to live. I'm not low income anymore, thanks to my husband. But my children, I still have children. I have a plumber's apprentice son who's joining the Navy because he can't afford to live here. I have my daughter who, her husband lives in Boeing. They're having trouble even thinking about buying a house. We need more options. We need things to be here. As far as you guys not listening or it's last minute or whatever, I moved to Bothell and I'm like, hey, there's city council meeting. Let's go see what that's all about. I learned about the comprehensive plan. You don't have to take it to my porch. I came to your porch. And also, you guys know what everybody thinks. We don't need another 10 years to decide on this plan because you know what everybody thinks and you know what we need as a city. And we elected you to make these decisions for us. You're not forcing development. You're making it so we can develop. You're not causing the development to come. You don't build houses in my backyard, but you are allowing other people to do it slowly because nothing happens overnight. And I see my time's up, so I'm going to go.
Thank you. That is all I have. I don't see anybody in the virtual audience who wishes to speak.
All right. Well, thank you very much. All right. Next up, we have the city manager report. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. I have one update that I wanted to share with the council and the community tonight, and that is on the 102nd Bridge closure. As you may recall, it was on Monday, October 21st, when in the afternoon, a truck traveling on State Route 522 towing equipment hit and damaged the underside of the 102nd Avenue Bridge. A field investigation that day and the following days concluded that repairs were necessary to safely reopen the bridge to vehicle traffic, and the bridge has remained closed to make sure that that again, safety being the primary concern, although we were fortunately able to open the bridge to pedestrians and bicycles. At the time when we talked about this at the first council meeting back, I mentioned there was 3 things that we needed to align in order to move forward, and that was the design. And I'm happy to report that we do have an engineered design to take this on. And then there was also, we needed the people to do the work, so the contractor, as well as the materials to do construction. We are now at a point where all 3 of those things are coming together. So as I mentioned, the design of the repairs is complete. The city has selected a contractor, and we are working on finalizing a contract with, knock on wood, hoping to have that contract signed this week. And then also materials are being procured to start. So construction is expected to start by early January at the latest. We are running into holiday season, so that's certainly a factor. It's possible that it'll start earlier, but what we will do is communicate out as soon as we do have that contract signed and we have a set start date. We will let the community know. The work will take approximately 4 weeks of on-site work to complete. So once we start, it's looking at around a 4-week time frame. And again, we'll keep that information updated as well. Once we're completed, I do want to emphasize this isn't a partial fix. This will be, again, everything goes as to plan. The bridge will be fully reopened to vehicles and pedestrians once that construction is complete. Certainly during construction, there will be some impacts. So for example, as we're fixing it, then pedestrian and bicycle access will be closed, but we will have detour routes to help folks find a way across. Also, State Route 522 will have to be closed overnight, typically between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. on working days, which working days in this case, when you look at what is the weekday when you're doing night work, is Sunday to Friday morning. And detours will be posted and available through downtown. The project, again, with that too, there may be some overnight construction noise, but we hope people will bear with us as we try and get the bridge reopened as quickly as possible. If people want to follow along and want to know where to find updates, if you do go to bothellwa.gov, you can either search for bridge closure, or if you throw in that / bridge closure for more information, you'll be able to find the page, and chances are it'll stay posted on our landing site too. So again, we thank everyone for their patience through this. It's been, I think we're thankful and fortunate that we are able to get to a point of reopening the bridge safely this quickly. And as council will recall, as we just we've been talking about legislative agendas and everything too, as the city did receive a federal funding of over $1 million to start the planning work of the replacement of that bridge. We will continue to also keep that fresh on the plans for our future of how do we get to the new day of a new bridge as well. But we're thankful that the existing bridge will be serviceable again here soon. That's my update for tonight, Mayor, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, City Manager. Next up is Council Committee Reports, Community Reports, and Conversations. Councilman Burgard.
Hey, thank you. Good evening. I wanted to give a brief update on some public engagement opportunity that we had this past week at North Creek Schoolhouse, which I'd never been in before. It's on the Historic Register, kind of a neat old building, kind of a musty smell, but we can get over that. We opened up the schoolhouse with help from city staff, so I wanted to thank the executive team for allowing us to meet there and making the space welcoming with stickers and refreshments. And we invited folks to come and just share what's on their mind, have a conversation with us. I attended with Deputy Mayor Alcabra, and it was moderately well attended. There were a lot fewer people than had come to the first council conversation that we started back in the summertime, but still had some interesting discussions. A lot of folks really, I think, wanted to have kind of one-on-one dialogue, which I'm still kind of thinking about how we can reformat this meeting style and really have opportunities for folks to come and share as a group rather than just one-on-one. But yeah, I'm going to kind of table making modifications or scheduling new council conversations until our council retreat in the new year, early new year, because I want to have a conversation with all of you and really understand what formats might work in the future rather than just make a quick decision up here. So for folks in the community who want to follow along, we'll be having more of those conversations in the new year and encouraged about that. So thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember Curd. Just since we have an unusually large audience today, I did want to remind everyone, we all keep office hours, and I know that most of us will also, like mine are Tuesdays before meetings, but as long as I have notice, so I can make sure I'm not working my full-time job, we will meet you here. I'll meet people for coffee because I'm always drinking coffee, but we're happy to meet close to you. If that's easier, please reach out to us. Our city emails are all on the website, and we can always talk one-on-one. You don't have to wait for a council conversation. Like, we're here to listen to you.
All right, I'm going to move on to projected agenda discussion. Does anyone have an item they'd like to bring up? Seeing none, I'd love a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Dodd and a second from Deputy Mayor Alcabra to approve the consent agenda. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Councilmember Zorns?
I have a red light on. You can teach old dogs new tricks. I just wanted to comment. I imagine a lot of folks sitting here already do this, but if you don't, you should look at the items that are on the consent agenda. There's a lot of things that shed, insight on what we have to spend money on. And then there's also some fun projects in the pipeline that that kind of get lost just by consenting everything. And so I was glad to see that the lease agreement for the museum is being renewed. And then the other thing is the professional services agreement for urban forest management, plant and street inventory, because it's been a long time coming. We had an arborist out to look at our trees and talk about the health of our trees. And this is a guy with a college education on trees and being an arborist, and he said Bothell has a terrible reputation among fellow arborists for their tree protection. So I'm glad to see that we're moving this forward to take care of our trees.
Councilmember Alders?
Thank you, Mayor. I also just want to add to what Councilmember Zorns has said about some of the interesting and exciting things that get approved in the consent agenda. For me this week, I'm excited particularly about the Department of Commerce grant for the First Lieutenant Nicholas Madrazo Memorial Park. It's really exciting that we're getting a new park and that process is moving forward. We love it when we receive state grants to make our projects happen. And so we don't often comment on what's going on in the consent agenda, but sometimes it's really exciting, even though it's just buried in there. So thanks for this moment to be able to call attention to that.
I just thank you, Councilmember Zorns, for starting this and just getting us a chance to call attention to what's in the consent agenda, because we have a brand new park. We have brand new tree protections that the council's been talking about for a couple of years, and we're finally starting to do that. We have, the lease agreement for the park at Bothell Landing, historical buildings. We honor our past, and we have a construction project for drainage improvements on 35th Avenue. So just within our consent agenda, we can see progress on trees, we can see a brand new park, we can see progress on roads, and we can see just kind of the ongoing, boring, but really impactful stuff that we do on a weekly basis around here. So thanks for drawing attention to that. City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 6-0 with Councilmember Menke absent and excused.
Thank you very much. All right, before we get to our first agenda item of the night, we are going to take a break. It is 7:14. We will be back at 7:30. All right, welcome back. First up on our list today, under Ordinances and Resolutions, is Agenda Bill 24208, the 2024 Comprehensive Plan and Associated Bothell Municipal Code Development Regulation Amendments. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And just by way of introduction, there are a number of items of legislation before you tonight to contemplate, and you'll be able to discuss them. And in order to navigate through and answer any questions council may have, you're joined at the table this evening by our Community Development Director, Jason Greenspan, and Deputy Director, Christian Getz. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Christian.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Council, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council members. Tonight, I've got a brief set of slides to run through. I want to give you the opportunity to recenter on where we are. For action tonight, staff are seeking City Council to consider approving ordinances for the comprehensive plan and the implementing zoning standard ordinances. Those ordinances are broken out in your packet. Briefly, the first one is the 2024 comp plan update, which includes the 14 elements, the land use map, the future land use map update, the sub-area plans, as well as appendices A through H. The second set of ordinances, there are 7 of them. Those are covering a number of topics in Chapter 11, 12, and 15 of the Bothell Municipal Code, which includes our zoning map update. And these are the alignment updates that go along with the comprehensive plan work. I do want to note that the final EIS was completed on November 18th last month, with the notice of availability having been issued within the timely manner. It needs to be done at least 7 days prior to the final action, which is what we're requesting tonight. I do want to also point out some of the upcoming work in the 2025 work plan. Next year, we are planning to return with 4 items previously discussed with council that were part of these updates. Those are not required at this time. We decided to pause those 4 items. Those were the floor area ratio, lot coverage, neighborhood scale retail, and then that mixed use overlay to zone cleanup task that we are going to kick off at the beginning of 2025. And also just want to note 2025 is pretty full with a bunch of major policy items coming your way, including the Housing Action Plan, the Climate Action Plan, Urban Forestry Management Plan, and the Downtown Sub-Area Plan update. So those 4 major projects are coming your way. These, along with a few specific zoning code updates, are on the projected docket for 2025. So with that, based on direction that staff have received in the development of the comp plan and the associated development regulations, we're asking City Council to approve the 8 drafted ordinances provided. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Mayor Thompson.
All right, well, I have a couple questions that I want them to cover, but I'm happy to let y'all go first. All right, I can just ask some questions. Oh, all right, Councilmember Zorns.
I feel like we kind of wait for Jean to turn her red light on, or to start, and then everybody else starts talking. So I have a couple questions, and then I have something. I didn't write it down on my computer, so I wrote my script on paper, so you'll have to excuse me if I start burying my nose in my paper. Someone had observed that, and I have a vague recollection that we talked about this, that parks and public institutions aren't included on the flume map, and there's a reason for that.
Public institutions and parks are designated on the future land use map, on the comprehensive plan map. They are not specific zones.
Okay.
So that's the two separations. That's why you would see
Okay.
the green parcels for parks on the future land use map.
Perfect.
But on the zoning map, they would be yellow or purple or whatever the underlying zoning would
Okay,
be.
thank you for repeating that and with patience and graciousness. And then, well, there is concern among the community about how can we make recommendations if Planning Commission didn't vet the full changes in density on November 6th from our October meeting. So I'm just putting that out there for the record. So my script, so I will read it. I want to make sure that I'm not attacking anyone's personhood. I want to make sure that everybody is clear that I'm not attacking your personhood here. It's not my intention, never has been. But we clearly are in an echo chamber with our representation, and there's a place for it, but not always. I remember a former mayor telling me multiple times, just follow your heart, Jane, follow your heart. And the problem with that is, if I follow my heart, I want to yell, or I want to lecture, and sometimes I want to knock heads together. So following my heart is not necessarily a prudent thing. My conscience, though, is another thing. So I made promises when I was out doorbelling, and I've talked with people, and conversations came up where people frequently said that they did not like downtown, that it had become so unwelcoming. And they hate the generic, massive look of it. And since I live near this and have been impacted by this, I promised people all the way up into Northeast Bothell and Northwest Bothell that I would fight and advocate for them. And part of that reason is I believe in our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but Bothell is only as strong as our neighborhoods are strong. And I'm going to read a few thoughts. I'm actually not going to read all their thoughts. But some of the thoughts we've heard are, you're degrading the quality of life in Bothell by trying to shoehorn more housing into an area that can't support it. And that resonated with me. Sometimes you look at new construction and it feels shoehorned into a piece of land. Like an oversized person sitting in too small of a chair. If everything our kids love about Bothell is unrecognizable, how can anyone be confident that they would want to live here? Another comment, unintended negative effects, minimum density requirements. Oh, this came from, I don't know if you read this. This came from, I think it was a developer in our last agenda packet. And I wasn't sure if they were advocating for aggregating properties, but they made the comment that unintended negative effects on minimum and density requirements may actually prevent construction of all housing. That, I think, is worth us taking time to dive into. The average resident, as we have seen, does not follow city business the same way city council does. Unless they're directly impacted about it, they go about their daily lives. We all know that that's true. I think people tend to assume that the people that they voted for are going to reflect their values and priorities more than they should be given credit for. And I'm guilty of making that assumptions back in the day, and you know what they say about making assumptions. We got some sweet letters from some of our little residents today. They asked for more bike lanes and more animals with the growth. And since I really value bridges for wildlife and pollinators in our urban settings, that resonated with me. And at Beardsley Crossing Apartments, there is street parking for apartment that seems to be apartment parking because it's there at night. And the only problem is they're parking on a bike lane, and makes that bike lane a moot point. Now, their parents also wrote and affirmed support for the comp plan. And I smiled over their mama's sweet observation that for today, their family is unified, but that might change over time when they grow up. And I will tell you that that's true. A lot, and I've heard other parents here say this, is that affordability is a challenge all over the area here in the Pacific Northwest. But all 5 of mine have said, Bothell isn't home anymore. It's gonna make me cry, sorry. Sorry. The only reason they like to come to Bothell is to see us, the 4th of July parade, and Ranch Drive-In. But Bothell doesn't feel like home anymore. Someone commented, we cannot afford to self-destruct by increasing our population beyond what Bothell can support. And I appreciate the enthusiasm of wide open arms to make people feel like there's room for that. We need to have that conversation. Bothell, the neighborhoods need to be resilient for Bothell to be resilient. If the neighborhoods aren't resilient, the whole city loses. You know that old analogy that when you have freedom to wave your hands around, but the freedom stops when you get up to somebody's face? And imagine how it would feel if you had a fist up against your face just an inch or two all the time. And I think that is what people are concerned about, is that it's going to feel like they have a fist just right within inches of their face of where they call home when there's something massive and intruding on their sense of safety and comfort. And we can't tell them that they shouldn't feel that way. They do. Those are honest feelings, and so we should be listening. Listening is finding places to accommodate with the growth. Mandated or not, we should be accommodating growth. But let's also accommodate the voices where that growth is going to happen. Let's set our neighborhoods up for success, and success is being able to age in place, to watch children grow, to welcome new neighbors, to build that community. Someone made a comment, and I wish I had, I'm not going to be able to find it, but someone made a comment about, I'm sorry. It was a great comment on community happening with growth and those connections happening. I can't remember who made it. It was one of you guys. And it was great. Let's set our neighborhoods up for success. Our role from the dais is not to make edicts, and we're not going to shame people for a different point of view. Their point of view has equal value, and that's equity. We are obligated to find balance in the mandates with the will of the people. We made changes in October that didn't get finessed until November, and that is where the community is saying, pump the brakes. That's not enough time to digest what the impact is. There is, if I was to do this to Councilmember Curd, he'd be like, please don't. But when something is pushed, just imagine what your reaction is. Your normal reaction when someone pushes you is to do what? Lean and push back. Isn't that a normal reaction? If someone comes up and pushes you, you just lean. I mean, even with our dog training, we have to make it real short and fast so that they don't feel pushed, because once they feel that push, that opposition starts. And I think that's why we need to be pumping the brakes, is people are rightfully feeling pushed. There's a brain trust here that knows unintended consequences. They have that lived experience. I'm looking at some of them. They have that lived experience, and we should heed it. If we don't find accommodations in our plan, we have not listened. And if there has been accommodations, I've watched some. I'm guilty of not watching all Planning Commission, but I've watched a good share of Planning Commission. but I have not witnessed where there has been a pause and accommodating an opposing point of view of where can we moderate and soften this. And we can't say we listened and no one will believe us. If someone wants to amend this to postpone this decision until February, I'm going to support you. There are things that you care most about. The comp plan will still be there in the best possible way. The earth will keep spinning on its axis. Calling people NIMBY or you find change scary is dismissive, and people are just going to automatically reject that. Open up the conversation. This can be pushed forward, and my little vote no will just be that little vote no, not because I hate this as a whole. I mean, look at this document. Hang on a second. You guys got to appreciate this. Look at this document. Anybody who's had to write a thesis, right? A thesis or a term paper knows a huge amount of Herculean amount of work went into it. There are pieces in here, though, that will sabotage what's the best of our neighbors, and that was not the intention of this. And it's shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't pause and do some more diving into this. Our city's beauty, resiliency, health, and soul will disappear. And again, please don't think it's my intention to attack your heart and your personhood. I just am obligated that we have a full discussion on this. And to spin a quote from Pearl Harbor, we have just awoken a sleeping giant. And that's my comment. Thank you for your patience.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Zorns, for this, and thank you for everybody who's here. I wish we could have this every single week, every day, 365, or every week, I guess, because we don't meet 365 days a year. But yeah, seriously, like whether we agree or not, we're community, we're neighbors. We agree on a lot more than we disagree on. I have to say, some things are more challenging than others. But if we can agree to disagree and just figure out a way to work together instead of, to your point, butting heads and all that. So I thank you for your comments, and thank you for everybody who spoke for and against. I very much appreciate that feedback, and we have a lot more opportunities to discuss this as Deputy Community Director. I mean, it's too long, man. It's called Christian. So just as Christian mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities to build upon this and improve upon this plan moving forward. Just want to say thank you. I appreciate you all.
Councilmember Aldrichs.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to just speak to, just the body of work that has gone into this, and just how developed this plan is. And I've spoken recently about just how many people were involved in the process all along. And I can empathize with, feeling like there needs to be more time. And, listening to members of our community who want more information. But there are some voices that I feel like we aren't hearing in this process that just by, basic logistics, we can't hear from. And those are the ones who we lost in this community due to unaffordability. I have stories to tell about, people who were valued members of our community, but they were forced out due to increasing rents, lack of subsidized housing and shelter, who were forced to, who are continued to forced to commute long distances to work in Bothell, who can't afford the homes that are for sale in Bothell, who are recent college graduates and can't afford the high housing prices. And these are some of the people who inspired me and encouraged me to run for public office. And I don't, when I come here to listen to my community and to make decisions, I'm not just representing the people who live in single family homes like myself, but I also represent people who are renters, who earn below the area median income, who are college students who want a future in the city. And I also represent my children's concerns because they want to be able to afford housing here in the future, since this is where they're growing up. Tonight, we've also heard from members of our community who empathize with the people who struggle to stay in Bothell or empathize with those who are unable to. And I'm grateful for these members of our community who make the ongoing effort to be engaged and involved in the public process. Like Deputy Mayor said, because we are a participatory democracy, it would be so great if every week our council chambers could be filled with people who are paying attention and involved. I'm just so grateful for the people who are engaged in the public process and for those who study the issues, who value inclusiveness and fairness, and who want to promote diversity, and that includes diverse housing types throughout the city. And for those who are here tonight, and I apologize that I can't be there in person, but I also don't want to share whatever I brought home from my kids. But I just want to welcome you, that as you're becoming aware of what's going on in the city and the work that the city does, I hope you stick around and that you can benefit from following along and being engaged going forward. Once again, I'll put in a plug for my newsletter. You are welcome to email me, and I will send you a newsletter ahead of every council meeting that tells you what we're about and what what we've recently covered, what we're going to cover next. And I just want, the folks here to know that I've heard that you have a desire for more education around the comprehensive plan. And while I don't support delaying the vote for that information to be able to get out there, I would like to see some information sessions held in the new year so that people can feel better oriented to the comprehensive plan and what the code amendment process is like and how this plan is sort of a stake in the ground to set us on a path for the next 10 years of planning, and that there is a whole long journey ahead of us as a community where we can all come together and learn together and talk about how we want to shape our community. So I would just like to request that those information sessions could be heard. I think we could accommodate the request for more information. And hopefully, council and community development department would be amenable to that as a proposal. I remember back in my planning commission days, we had a senior planner, David Boyd, who has since retired. But back then he was talking about developing educational materials for the public to inform everyone of how they could maximize their existing property to create more housing diversity. This was around middle housing. He described how, to simplify the permit process so that if somebody wanted to add an ADU or to, divide their house and make it a duplex, and that just to provide quick, easy guides for people so that they could be both informed of what's possible and also have a smooth process that doesn't require, a degree in civil engineering and law to figure out how to move forward with making changes to your property. And so I'm wondering if we could combine those efforts now that we have middle housing on the books, now that middle housing is now, written into our comprehensive plan for the first time. Could we offer our community those educational materials going forward? And so that's just sort of my question and my ability to listen to the concerns and offer something to the community that hopefully we could all get behind. I will be voting to approve this plan tonight so that we can continue the work of planning for our city and for its future. And yeah, I just would like to know that everybody who wants to be involved can be involved, and that we are very open and transparent with information and tools and support to make informed decisions. So thank you.
Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to acknowledge all of the work that went into this plan. I want to thank staff. I know it's been a long journey for you all in this process, so thank you for your diligent work over the last couple of years. I also want to thank all of the community members who provided input, whether they were early on in the process and along the way, or community members who weighed in during the public hearing after all of the maps were published, the densities were defined, and the environmental impact statement was published. I think it's really important to have community input and community participation, and I think we've seen that here with this plan, so thank you. I do still have large concerns about the proposed density in RM2 and RM3, specifically the minimums and maximums. I know last week there was some discussion about increasing property owners' ability to use their properties, but specifically with the minimum densities, we are actually removing property rights from some property owners who want to remove what might be on their property and replace it with a structure that might be bigger or smaller that better suits their needs. So making a minimum density is potentially forcing someone to keep what's there, or if they want to change the orientation of the property and what's on it, to build at a much higher density than they may want to. As well, on the higher end, there's a potential for a lot of loss of open space, and specifically the removal of open space in backyards and other places within neighborhoods that may not have walkability to parks, especially in Snohomish County, where we only have 3.5 of the city's parks. I think the loss of this open space is going to be detrimental to both adults and children. We need open space. We need places to be outside. And if we don't have those on individual properties or nearby parks, even on parks that are not accessible because we don't have sidewalks in specific areas, I think that's very concerning. And we talk a lot about mental health and supporting mental health in the community, and I don't think these changes are going to help that. I think it's going to actually make it much worse. And I have a lot of concern about that. I also think that we're planning for density in general, but the majority of our housing needs are actually in the lowest income bands, the lowest AMI income bands, and the type of housing that we're going to get is going to continue to be market rate housing with this upzoning. It's lower income housing and lower 50% AMI housing is built through other methods. It's built through government participation, nonprofit participation, and other means. These are private properties. They're going to move at private property rates, and the structures that are built are going to be moving at market rate. So we're just going to get more of the same pricing, and we're not going to see a reduction in housing prices that are meaningful, that are going to allow people to come back or allow people to stay. So that's also concerning to me. So tonight, I will be voting no on this proposal of the comprehensive plan in its current form. I wish I could support it. I think there's a lot of good things in it, but enough concern remains that tonight I will be voting no. Thank you.
Councilmember Curd.
Thanks. It's my time to read. It's kind of a fair critique that the document is really unwieldy. And I'm grateful that we put effort into making it more readable with visual elements, which is a huge improvement over our last comp plans, which were hundreds of pages of text only. And we're just completing the minimum legal requirements from the state. So huge improvement there, but there's still a ways to go. I'm really grateful that the plan has been informed by professionals, that we retained a super qualified team of consultants to help us navigate these new requirements from the state. Although the zoning map gets all the attention, the comprehensive plan is really all that, comprehensive. It doesn't look at housing in a vacuum alone, but growing alongside our transportation and utility infrastructure, preserving and restoring our environment and parks and open space. I'm inspired by the vision for our city that has been compiled from the feedback from everyone over the course of this process. It's an overwhelming document, and I don't know if or how we can encourage the state to make the process more iterative and less intense to review every decade, but I will say I believe this is the first time Bothell has posted roadway signs advertising comprehensive plan open houses, held notably on both sides of the county line too, which is amazing and shows the efforts and lengths that we went to make this plan more inclusive than the ones in the past. Followed up by an investment in more communication staff during the budget approval last week, I'm so encouraged by the direction of our outreach. As the only one up here for a long time who lives in a condo, people like me belong in this decision. And I hope me and my neighbors aren't a fist in anyone's face. Many meetings have been difficult and leave me feeling othered. And I wish folks like my parents who bought a house on a blue-collar budget decades ago understand the current struggle to find anything here in those same levels of affordability today. I love my condo. It's exactly what I need, and it gives me a chance to build equity. Housing choices are something we need to plan for, not because everyone can afford a single-family home, and sometimes apartment living isn't for everyone either. We need more housing for single people and for families with kids and for people with no incomes and for large intergenerational families and mobile homes. The list goes on. The problem is we usually just have two kinds of housing on the market in the city, and it doesn't always match what people want to live in or where they want to live in the city. With the housing element updates in this comprehensive plan, we are building on our previous outreach and the community's mandate to allow middle housing and committing not just to identifying, but addressing those barriers to seeing it get built here from a policy and zoning perspective. Like others up here, I hope that the process has encouraged folks who are just now engaging with urban planning and development economics to learn more and stay curious about it. But the long and short of it is that we have to plan for the future, and our comprehensive plan guides investments in future infrastructure and services to support the growth that we have to take. A no vote now would be irresponsible to the intentional and more representational planning, surveying, and stakeholder groups done since we first approached this topic of middle housing in 2019. It's been a long time, and it's our jobs to be the experts here. What we can take comfort in, regardless of your values or the trust in us for the outcome tonight, is that the city is a work in progress. And this single plan is not the only time to get involved, since it's been amended each year. And we've also committed to entirely reevaluating the housing portion of it early, 5 years from now. After almost 800 hours of reading this document, verifying data, researching policy, proposing edits, discussing its underlying values and assumptions with my community, who've been patient enough to be open-minded and listening to valid critiques with good faith edits, I'm ready to adopt it tonight. Thanks.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. This is a really tough decision. It is not unnoticeable that we've had more people at the last few meetings. And I do want to acknowledge, and not to be negative or anything, but change is hard. I grew up in Bothell. It looks very different from where I grew up. We had a lot of folks in Queensboro, and I had people here who I'd gone to school with their children. I had a gentleman whose kids I babysat when I was a teenager. I walked on the streets that don't have sidewalks still. And I see a lot of the challenges there as the legacy of loose development regulations. And it's been a passion of mine to help firm those up. Some of those are legacy from when it was unincorporated Snohomish County. And we didn't see a lot of evolution in past plans. And we also didn't see too much change in our neighborhoods, but what was pretty consistent is a house that my parents could have afforded because they bought their home for about $93,000 in 1993 on blue-collar jobs. Both of them worked for, it was GTE, then Verizon, then Frontier, and my dad retired from Ziply 2 years ago. And my mom left her job at the phone company when I was in 8th grade to be a paraeducator and took, I think, it was 1/3 of her other job. She made $11 an hour as a paraeducator when I was in middle school, and my second job out of college, I made more money than her. It was ridiculous. And I have to think that without just the years they were born allowing them to get housing at a cheaper rate, I wouldn't have lived in Bothell. If my parents had tried to buy their house 10 years later, 20 years later, we would be far out. They might still have been commuting to Everett and to Sorensen to work, and then they would be contributing to our horrible environmental situation. People like my mom, who are paraeducators, deserve to live close to where they go to school. They deserve to know their community and be a part of it. I've done ride-alongs with police officers who can't afford to live in the community that they protect. We have firefighters that I get to talk with pretty regularly, and they can't afford afford to live where we are unless they've been working for a long time and they got to buy a house in a completely different housing market. Housing shouldn't be, I got here early and your generation can just figure it out. And when that happens, we also lose people. I know plenty of people who've had their kids in Bothell, and then those kids want to have kids, but they can't afford to live here. It's laughable to them, which is a shame. So they move, and then the parents move, because if I've learned anything from my dad as a grandparent, it's that he's going where his grandson is, and a lot of people feel that way about their grandkids, because grandkids are awesome. Change is hard, but the way we've been doing things has left a lot of people out of Bothell and out of its future. The idea that the city should stay the same because we like it ignores the fact that we simply don't have a right over our neighbor's property. We just don't. If that's something that's really important to you, if you want a set of like 5 colors that people can paint their houses, we have communities with HOAs, and we have a lot of them in Bothell. And that's a great place to live if you want to lose that freedom. It's just really a shame to me that it took sort of this spread of fear of change to get a lot of people engaged. And I really was heartened by Ms. Moynihan's comments that she moved here and just showed up to meetings. We meet here. This is your building. I know my taxes paid for it for years and still are. And it's not a secret when we meet. We're always here. You can come here and talk to us. People who come here and yell at us are still welcome every week. It's an open meeting. This has been a 2-year process, and it is easy to ignore a postcard that says, Imagine Bothell Comprehensive Plan. It's also been state law for 30 years that cities like Bothell comprehensive plan to plan for growth in the future. This is not our first plan. It's just something where I really wish we had a magic way to get people involved. And I really appreciate that our staff threw, I think, every idea on the planet out this time. We had giant notice boards, we had mailings, we had social media posts, we had emails. We had multiple council members who send out emails to people that they stay connected with, advertising it. I was telling everybody that I ran into, Mayor Thompson and Councilmember Aldrichs and I spoke to a leadership class at Skyview a few days before we had a meeting at Skyview about the comp plan. And we were telling the teacher of the class and the students about that meeting. Like, there are going to be people that get missed because we're all very busy. I get it. Everyone up here has a full-time job, this part-time job. A lot of us are raising kids, so then I don't know if you guys have kids in North Shore, but you get about 1,000 emails a day about things that you need to track. There's a lot to pay attention to, and I really feel for people who feel like they didn't get the information. And I really welcome and hope we get feedback on ways that we could have reached you, because I'm struggling to find ideas. It's been a very comprehensive thing. I will be voting for the plan. We can't do the kind of plans we've done in the past. We just haven't kept up with the demand, and people haven't stopped moving here and having kids and wanting to live here. And every city that comprehensive plans is doing stuff like this. We can take this meeting and anonymize the comments and say, okay, it wasn't this person's comment, it's just this feedback. And it's happening in Kenmore and Kirkland and Woodinville and Everett and every city because our region is under immense pressure. I really appreciate too that we're not working in the dark. We didn't rely on just the people we heard from during the process. There is a ton of data that shows that as a region, 70% of Puget Sound agrees that we need more multifamily housing, more middle housing, more housing types in our communities. This isn't a plan that just seemed like a good time one day when the mayor was driving to the office and then we went with it. It's backed by data, and a condo like Councilmember Kurds may not be what you want to live in, but that's the freedom of the market. And it lets him be a part of Bothell, it lets you be a part of Bothell in a house that you like. Sorry to single you out, Kirsten, but I too live in a single family home. Admittedly with a pirate ship in the backyard. Probably not cool for an HOA. So, and I just want to speak to, I can appreciate that we're never all going to feel the same. We're all also up here because we were elected to be up here. And I'd like to think that we all ran honestly and talking about what our values were and the values we would center in decisions. Working on something for 2 years and coming to this decision point and voting no, I wish we had heard from our colleagues who have reservations about this before today. It really gives me pause and makes me feel like there hasn't been as active participation in our meetings as I would have hoped. This has been a 2-year process, and it's just a shame that these concerns are coming up sort of last minute and really with no hope of I wish they'd come up before today. That's really disappointing. But I will be voting yes, and I look forward to a Bothell that might just exclude less people in 20 years.
All right, I actually have some questions for you guys, so you don't just feel like you're sitting down there watching. Can you briefly explain for us, and for those in the audience, I know we talked about this last week, but we got more people here than we were last week, and I want to make sure everybody's aware. Can we explain how growth targets in the comprehensive plan work, where they come from, how we meet them, and if that's something we control or not?
The growth targets are built based on Office of Financial Management, birth rate, mortality rate, immigration rate, all of those. The county uses those rates for projections and then sits down and says, okay, all the cities within King County, Snohomish County, Pierce County, here's the allocation that we have to accommodate. I think OFM provides 3 tiers. Typically, they would select the middle. I've been doing a lot of back research in some of the previous meetings to go through kind of how we discussed this previously. And so then with that, the county hands those out to each city. And the city then needs to plan for those growth targets. And then this go around, it was the added layer of affordability bands within those housing projections. So our 12,000 plus are broken down into so many 0 to 30, 30 to 50, so on and so on. So that's how those are established from GMA's requirements, pulling from OFM, gets put down through the countywide planning policies and distributed out to the cities.
Thank you. And you mentioned House Bill 1220, and people might not know that now not only do we have to plan for growth targets, we have to plan for growth targets at certain income levels. So it's not just enough to say we have the capacity. We have to have I believe it's a typology, correct? Did Commerce say these are the different housing types that you have to have?
It's based on affordability, and within that, there are some typologies that could equal a certain affordability band.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have to have housing types that are at all different affordability bands, and we know that big apartment buildings and single-family homes aren't those.
Right. So okay. Scale influences what could count as a 60 to 80. The example that was shifted was ADUs, because Bothell is a high-cost community. They could no longer be considered 80% of AMI in a moderate or lower cost community. They could have been, so they were shifted up to the 100% or higher of AMI.
Okay, perfect. Just to be clear, are we going? We've heard a few people say we're going beyond our growth targets, and we could meet our growth targets with a no action alternative. Can you speak to the veracity of that?
The no action alternative was identified upfront to be not an option, especially when we look at 1220 and the affordability bands. The amount of capacity that we've created within the medium density, creating that hybrid preferred alternative through the conversations over the summer, was to establish a capacity that, yes, if everything built out, if every home was removed and built to the maximum, it would, but that's how it is typically done anyway, where you have to overshoot and create that capacity because we need to take out critical areas and their buffers. We take out just the possibility and the likelihood of redevelopment. A home built in the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s is not likely to be demolished. Something that might be a little older and ready to be updated is more likely. So the methodology and the projections based on the guidance from Commerce and PSRC was what we used to extrapolate that and make sure we had enough capacity within the city.
Perfect. So basically, we we are doing what we have to do to make sure that we can build the actual amount of units that are in our growth target and that is feasible, not just say, hey, there's capacity and we know that everything's going to get done, even though we know it's not going to get done, correct?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. So since we're just meeting our growth targets, anytime we take it away from some other place, then it has to go someplace else, right? Like, so if we add or subtract over here, the opposite happens somewhere else.
Yes.
When we've had a lot of talk about the hybrid option, and I know we're very much leaning toward the neighborhoods option, and the hybrid option essentially, and tell me if I understand this correctly, took some of the growth from the neighborhoods and put it into like new centers essentially. So we can have areas where there might be a couple more businesses, there might be the density support in our transit, and that essentially took that density out of the single family neighborhoods. Correct?
With the centers?
With the hybrid option compared to the neighborhood option.
The hybrid maintained the neighborhood density approach and actually utilized the centers piece to increase heights, add FAR capacity within the centers.
But when we added those centers and added that capacity in from the neighborhood option, that essentially meant that we had to then have less growth in the single-family neighborhoods and the folks that are coming here and talking to us tonight to add those centers and building up in density, correct?
Yes, I see what you mean, yeah.
Okay, sorry, it's late. It's been a long day. So the change from the neighborhood approach going to the hybrid option really took growth out of the neighborhoods and added it into these centers? Or are the centers in the neighborhoods?
Well, yes and no. I think what it did was it created the ability to not dial it up so high in the neighborhoods to achieve those targets based on the projected. Here's how many acres of this density.
So basically that change meant that compared to the neighborhood options, the final project that we're seeing actually had lower density in the neighborhoods than it would have if we hadn't have gone to the hybrid option and we would have selected the neighborhoods option.
Right, if we had left the centers the same.
Cool. The next part's not a question, so I'm not going to make you answer it. We did a middle housing feasibility plan a couple of years ago, and it said that 4.7% of lots in Bothell would be feasible to develop over the time horizon. I think it was 20 years. And which is probably why since we passed it, even though there was a lot of criticism at the time, and we had a lot of people coming in here saying, hey, delay, and we delayed, we did more public outreach. But we've passed that, and we haven't had any criticism since passing it, because this change happens pretty slowly, you guys. Like we would love development to happen faster in some ways, but like it just doesn't. It takes a long time. There's a lot of macroeconomic factors that go into it, interest rates and growth cycles. That middle housing feasibility study went on to say that if we wanted to double the density of middle housing, it would go from 4.7% of lots in Bothell to 3.8. So if we look at like a residential median, or it would add the 3.8 to the 4.7 to go to 8.55%. So if we look at these residential medium areas, you guys, roughly 8.5% of the lots in Bothell will be feasible to develop over the next 20 years. And that's not what's going to get redeveloped. That is what, if it is financially feasible and somebody wants to do it, like that will happen. Like this is not a huge, big, sweeping change. It's going to happen pretty slowly. But I want to talk about some of the why behind this, because we've heard some people saying, like, what's the why? One of the unfortunate parts about these discussions is that at the end of it, we're going to take a vote. And that vote is going to give some people the idea that their wants and desires weren't considered. And I think that's really unfortunate, because as you've seen from the comments so far, we don't all agree on everything, but I am deeply confident that every single person up here on the dais cares about all of you, even the people that you think are more aligned than the others. I appreciate, value, and really care about individual people in this room that have spoken to both sides of this issue we're facing tonight, and I don't want any of you to think you don't matter to me, because you do. So my why, change isn't something we can stop. It's only something we can shape. And on City Council, our job isn't to freeze time at the exact moment that we moved to Bothell and to keep the buildings looking the same forever. Our job is to shape what kind of Bothell our kids will experience, to listen to our community, to design a comp plan that we think we will address the biggest issues that we all face. And what I've heard from community members since I started seeking office in 2019 is that the way we have historically chosen to shape growth isn't really working for anybody. If you bought a house 2 or 3 decades ago, you've sat by and watched as your kids and friends have maybe had to move away because they couldn't afford to live here. You've seen traffic get worse. You've seen your taxes go way up. And you might live in a big house with a big yard that needs a lot of maintenance and has a bunch of empty bedrooms that you raised your kids in, but you don't use anymore. And you'd love something smaller. And your home price has tripled, so you can afford to move. But you don't want to live in a big apartment building, and you love your neighborhood, and you don't want to leave your friends. And how we've chosen to grow historically is almost exclusively big apartment buildings and big single-unit homes. And if this is you, I think you deserve better options than what we've historically chosen to give you. Now, on the other side of the fence, if you grew up here and you're between, say, 20 and 40, odds are that you've never known a Bothell that has housing you can afford to buy and put down roots in your hometown. And if you're still here, you're probably either renting whatever you can afford or living with your parents and wondering if you'll ever be able to afford to put down roots in the community that raised you. Right now, the median first-time homebuyer in the country, the average age of the median first-time homebuyer in the country is 38 years old. And the median home price in the country is just a hair over $400,000. And in Bothell, as per my Google search earlier today, it's a little over $1 million. And that's a lot of money. And if this describes you and you live here and you want to put down roots, but you can't because of how we've chosen to shape growth in the past, I think you deserve better options too. We got public comment today from a resident of Bothell that I think spoke to this really well. I'm just going to quote, "A common lament of my friends is that Bothell is too expensive to live in. When we graduated high school in 2010, we assumed we'd be able to come back, buy houses, and start families in this great city. Not one of my friends has been able to do that." That's the result that our decisions on how we shape growth have given us. And I think that our kids deserve adults who will prioritize their ability to put down roots and get a home that they can raise their kids in over making sure the building they were raised in still looks the same. And the way we've historically chosen to shape growth isn't working for anybody. All of y'all come and tell us how this isn't working for me. Some of you say this isn't working for me and I can't afford to live here. Some of you say this isn't working for me. Traffic's terrible and the way we've chosen to grow has been bad. And if you're here, I'm kind of repeating myself, so I'm going to skip that part. I ad-libbed and it's what I wrote down. In our shoes, we represent and care about, we represent all of you, and we care about shaping growth in a way that makes Bothell a better place for all of us. And we see, regardless of what you want us to do tonight, a city that desperately wants to change the way we shape growth. Because the no action alternative is watching us continue on the same course we're on right now, and sitting by and doing nothing as all of our problems keep getting worse. And I think Bothell deserves a lot better than that. So I also think there's probably a lot of people here tonight because they have heard a fear-based message and they think something nefarious is happening. And if that's you, I understand why you're here. If I thought that the city council was gonna force me to pay for my neighbor's apartment building or was on the take or any of the other untrue things we've seen messaged into the community, I'd show up too. But if that's you, honestly, you've been misled by people who should know better. And I'm sorry for that. I wish that in our community, we could have honest conversations about methods to address our problems without resorting to assumptions that the people we disagree with are doing so in bad faith. We should do better than that. What we're doing up here is reacting to a community who's told us loud and clear that the way past leaders have chosen to shape growth isn't working for them. And if we were to copy and paste the 2005 comp plan, when nobody likes the results we got from it 20 years later, we would be doing all of you a disservice. I think the Deputy Mayor said something to this earlier. Regardless of what you showed up to say tonight, thank you for coming. Because you all care about the future of Bothell. And agree or disagree on methods, I appreciate you being here because I care about this place too. And I think it's fantastic that we're having this conversation. And I wish the conversation had a little bit different tone or form sometimes, but you all matter to me. And we are doing our level best up here to make Bothell a better place for all of you to live in. And we've been doing that throughout this comp plan. We've been responsive to the public engagement that we've seen. And I too will be voting in support of it tonight. And I would love to entertain a motion. Deputy Mayor.
I move to adopt an ordinance repealing the previous comprehensive plan and adopting the comprehensive plan periodic update.
I second.
I have a motion as read from Deputy Mayor Alcabra and a second from Councilmember Curd. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
No.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
No.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 5-2 with Councilmember Zorns and Mankey dissenting.
Fantastic. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt an ordinance amending Title 11 of the BMC.
Second.
I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Alcabra and a second from Councilmember Dodd. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
No.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Zorns dissenting.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt an ordinance amending BMC Titles 12 and 15, technical corrections to reference to comprehensive plan.
I second.
Second.
Ooh, I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Alcabra and a second from Councilmember Curd. Hat tip to Councilmember Alders. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
No.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Zorns dissenting.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt an ordinance amending Title 12 of the BMC relating to housing.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Alcabra and a second from Councilmember Dodd. You'll get it next time, Councilmember Alders. I know you will. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
No.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Zorns dissenting.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt an ordinance amending BMC Chapter 12.26, non-conforming use structures and other improvements.
Second.
I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Alcabra and a second from Councilmember Alders. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
No.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Zorns dissenting.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt an ordinance amending BMC Section 12.32.100 relating to site plan review.
Second.
I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Alcabra and a second from Councilmember Dodd. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
No.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Zorns dissenting.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt an ordinance amending BMC Title 12 relating to zoning.
I second.
I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Alcabra and a second from Councilmember Kurd. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
No.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
No.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 5-2 with Councilmembers Zorns and Mankey dissenting.
All right. One last time with feeling, Deputy Mayor.
It's the last one now.
Yeah.
Too tired reading all this. I move to adopt an ordinance adopting new BMC Chapter 15.07 unit lot subdivisions.
Second.
I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Alcabra and a second from Councilmember Dodd. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
No.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Zorns dissenting.
All right, next up, we have a study session. Before that, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to make this an 8-minute break. It's 8:32. We will be back in session at 8:40. Welcome back. We're here
Recording in progress.
We're here for a study session, and I don't have the number, but it is about Senate Bill 5290, and I am going to kick it over to the city manager.
Absolutely. It's Agenda Bill 24209, and it is our one study session of the night. And I'll note it's a bit of a briefer, short study session, but we also wanted to put this in front of council before coming back in January for action. And so it is to be in compliance with a state law that was passed. We are largely in compliance with that, but there's a few more things to do, and got some guidance earlier this year in how to do it. So with that, I'm going to turn things over once again to our Deputy Director, Christian Getz, to walk us through what's going to be coming back for vote in January. Christian?
Thank you. And yeah, we wanted to have this discussion, kind of pull it away, shifting some significant gears here to get into the nitty gritty of this code. So it wasn't lost within all of the work with the comp plan, all of those development regulations. So no action required. We're just looking for your consideration and any input that you've got. Senate Bill 5290 was passed a couple of years ago. Some of it went into effect in 2023, except Section 7. So Section 7 talks about deadlines for local project permit review. It changes what we in land use have always considered the 120-day shot clock to 3 different tiers based on the permit types. It's meant to provide, the entire intent of the bill was to provide greater predictability, streamline, and more accountability for the jurisdictions. So it shifts from a flat 120 in-house number of days for a project to be reviewed to 65 days for a type 1. That's a project that doesn't have any public notice. So, for example, a boundary line adjustment. You're shifting the line between you and your neighbor, 65 days in-house that we would review it. 100 days for something that would have a public notice sign, like a short plat or a subdivision, And then 170 days, that actually jumps up a little bit for anything that has a public hearing. So that could be a conditional use permit or a variance that's going to go to the hearing examiner. So it creates a little bit more time. What we have kind of put forth within the packet was the few changes where we have reference to the 120-day timeline. We're going to peel that away and just reference the state law. So if it ever changes in the future, we don't have to do that again, so that we are consistent. Some of the major themes beyond those permit review timelines, there's application standards and milestones that we have to follow. There are some grant and technical assistance opportunities for compliance. Those are intended for jurisdictions that may not have those enacted, such as electronic permitting. If we didn't have that, we would seek a grant to establish an electronic permitting system to expedite that process. The other main thing that this has is tied to the timelines, some accountability measures, and that includes some annual reporting. So instead of one city saying, "Oh, here's how long it takes for us to do our permits," we're not sure how they're measuring the ins and outs. The state, we're waiting on the final guidance from them. It'll be apples to apples between all jurisdictions, reporting every year for every March for the previous year, and you'll see where everything stacks up. There are some requirements, and that's where that accountability comes in, and jurisdictions could be subject to refunds, maximum of 20% of a permit fee application. There are a whole number of options to implement to avoid that, basically following best practices. We believe, and we've included those in the staff report, what we implement in accordance with that, that measuring requirement. We believe we've included those, and we wouldn't be subject to refunds. We are interested in receiving the final guidance so we can start reporting for 2024. That'll be the baseline data, and then every year after, every jurisdiction will continue to include that. It does include some other things that not only require us to be accountable, it requires the applicant to be accountable. If so many days pass between the applicant responding, if they're beyond 60 days in their response, 30 more days gets added to their clock that we have, or our clock that we have and we're trying to achieve. So there's a lot of maintenance in how we track that, but we think we're set up really well to make sure we're not subject to refunds. Staff does a really great job of working through these applications. They're seeking to get projects to a yes, and I can't recall any denials that we've ever had to issue or recommendations for denial. All the changes are very discrete within the packet materials, all found within Title 11. We do reference those new revision timelines in the materials, and we look forward to complying with those. So next actions will come back January 7th with an interim ordinance. Interim just because this does go into effect for the Section 7, that's the new timelines on January 1. We don't have any concern over decisions that we'd be making within that time frame. We've been doing a pretty good job of making sure we're within that. We'll come back within 60 days to hold a public hearing, and then within 6 months we'll come forward with a final ordinance for hopefully approval. So that's what I've got. If you have any questions, happy to answer any.
I think we should follow state law, and I appreciate that you're doing the work so that we do.
It's cool to follow the law. I'm wondering, it's been a year, and I'm confused. I think that we talked about permit timelines earlier this year, didn't we? there was something, maybe I was dreaming about it, but I recall that we had made changes or updates. One of the things that was in our code was like we required site plans to have certain like really kind of obsolete requirements. And I think that we had kind of updated and changed that. And I'm not sure if that was actually now part of the comprehensive plan. Do you recall?
Since May, I don't recall any discussions around adjustments to the application section. I do know that we have modified Title 11, which runs through kind of what the requirements are for an application in recent years.
Okay.
I do recall when we adopted the Middle Housing Code earlier this year, we made some clarifications for the permit types that would be associated with middle housing, given that some of those types were new. So that might be what you're recalling.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And at that time, I was hoping, I was unable to maybe put it into words, and that we'll see now. But I was hoping that, you know, when you go out to do development, it's a huge risk, and we all know this. And whether you are you know, just want to redevelop your house or you want to build an ADU, this is where, okay, I'm starting to recall. We want to empower people who want to know more about what they can do with their property, to know what's within their, you know, legal right to do, and empower them to follow the process and have expectations kind of lined up. And so I'm hopeful or curious maybe more what the community development does now or maybe planning to implement to help people understand really clearly and succinctly permit timelines, what to expect for, you know, zoning changes and all this other, like, can they build an ADU, or, you know, how is that process simply done in pre-application, or is there another education or one-pagers or that sort of thing that you're planning to do to kind of accompany this legal mandate?
Yeah, I think through these new updates, it's a perfect opportunity for us to take that and look to providing, you know, new handouts, new materials that can help guide anyone through the process. If they, you know, here's the type that you're looking for, here's how the ins and outs work, some of the behind the curtain work for applications. And we're also getting through a lot of new questions that we haven't had before on middle housing as we start to see a few more of those projects come in, whether they're at the preliminary stage, at the counter, or over the phone. And so that's helped us kind of build our understanding of the types of questions that are being asked that we can that we've been working to expand upon. And so creating handouts is kind of the natural next step. And through the Housing Action Plan webpage that I think we've created, creating ways to make sure it's clear for folks, what can I do on my property? You know, that initial, is it an ADU, is it duplex? What's the best thing for me to do? It's like, well, we can't tell you what to do, but we can give you a lot of material and information to help guide you through that process, starting with some of those questions.
I would also add that since we are entirely virtual when it comes to permitting through mybuildingpermit.com, we have a permit center component of our webpage in community development. There are a lot of forms there, and some of them are really geared towards a general contractor that maybe works in their trade, knows how to navigate a permitting system. I think we can revisit those to make it a little bit more accessible to the general public and maybe have some of the how-tos located there.
That's a great idea. Yeah. I like the accessibility, you know, features, and permitting timelines are just one component of many uncertainties when looking at development. And so the more we can lay things out for people about expectation management, the better, I think, outcome we'll have for whoever's looking at developing and for the city too. So thanks.
Quick question. One, I thought I saw discussion that whether someone asked for an extension or didn't, everybody got the same time period extension. on a permit? Was that in this agenda bill?
The Bothell Municipal Code has allowances for extensions on certain types of permits.
Okay.
And then we'd have to look at what, there's no language within the state S5290, any changes that related to extensions.
Okay. I'll dig deeper. I'm pretty sure I saw it in here, and I thought that was curious. Whether someone asked for it or didn't, they were automatically given an extra, what was it, 30
Certain
days?
ones are, yes. For a building permit, for example, there are extensions when you're so close, and
Okay.
we're trying to prevent it from expiring, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
One question. that's-
Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Sorry, this is Eileen. I think I may know what you're thinking of, so I just wanted to put it out there in case this is what
I
you're
would be
thinking
glad
of.
if someone knew what I was thinking of.
So there's provisions for basically like if the developer puts something on hold, then we get, for a certain amount of time, then the city's shot clock gets extended. So I have to wonder if that's perhaps what you're thinking of.
Could be. Could be. It'll be one of those great mysteries. I just thought it was, what I saw was, and I was reading it, was whether someone asked for it or it was just sitting there gathering dust, they would automatically get an extra 30 days.
That would be if an application is sent out for correction. You've submitted a short plat, you need to fix these 10 things, and we don't hear from them after 60 days, we can add 30 days to our shot
Okay.
clock.
Okay,
If
that
it goes, Bothell Code says after 180 days, it can be withdrawn due to inactivity.
Okay.
Keeping that momentum along, yeah.
Okay. And kind of related to this, and it's more of a matter of curiosity because I don't think it directly relates with what you're going to be doing here. Several years ago, heard developers talking about it would be, or builders were saying it would be great in community development if there was a set of, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 ADU plans that were pre-approved by the city, and all a person would need to do is say, does my lot accommodate it? And they could just pay a smaller fee instead of having an architect. It would look like, maybe somebody else's ADU, maybe a different color across town. But is that a practical way to approach encouraging ADUs, or is it complicated because everybody lives on different pieces of property?
Yeah, it is practical. Cities like Renton, I know Seattle has a program, I think it's called AD Universe, where there are a set number of accessory dwelling unit plans that are pre-approved. They're limited cost from the architect, and then it's merely site plan review. Do you have the lot coverage? Can it meet setbacks? So it cuts down the amount of review and permitting costs
it makes this
and
go-
time.
Yeah, makes the
yes.
process go faster.
Yes.
So is that something that community development would welcome if council placed it as a priority, or would you be like, we've got to hire somebody else for this?
I think it is something that we could really investigate the feasibility of in the housing action plan.
Okay.
Because we want to make sure that we're coming with strategies to deliver housing at every income level.
Right.
And simplifying a process from the permitting side for ADUs, at least at the front end on the design side.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense, but as Christian mentioned, setbacks, grading plans,
Exactly.
utility plans, those would still
Exactly.
need to be kind of
If there's
tailored.
trees, if there's water.
Exactly,
all
but
that
yeah, well, I
stuff,
think
yeah.
it's something we could investigate in the housing action plan.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Elders?
Thank you, Mayor. I was hoping I could jump in. It's harder when I'm not in the room. But I'm really grateful for Councilmember Curd and even Councilmember Zorn's questions about those ADU plans, because that's what I had mentioned in my previous comments around the comprehensive plan. That is exactly what Senior Planner David Boyd had suggested doing as an extension of the middle housing work. And so I'm very much in support of pulling those plans together, having them ready made so that people can easily, select one that works for their property and get it quickly approved through the permitting process. So yeah, I'm really grateful to hear that this Senate bill is somewhat facilitating that, but that there's also more that the city and the community development department can do to make that process simpler for people. Thanks.
Do you have everything you need from us?
Yes, thank you.
Well, in that case, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Oh, wait. Oh, there is? I'm pretty sure there's not. I don't have my thing with me, but I already adjourned anyway.